Before Shedeur Sanders could even warm up his throwing arm, the internet had already decided who he was. Viral moments, luxury watches, and post-game swagger made him an icon. But at what cost? For Bruce Arians, the price is clear: the erosion of football's core values. His candid pushback against the hype surrounding Sanders is less about blaming the player and more about questioning the culture that built him into a brand before he had a full NFL season behind him. As football becomes more spectacle than sport, the balance between athleticism and algorithms grows harder to maintain. Arians sees Sanders not as a problem, but as the consequence. And if that balance tips too far, the league risks burning out its brightest stars before they ever get to shine on their own terms. The real danger isn't Shedeur's personality. It's the industry's need to monetize it before he's ready. The conversation around Shedeur Sanders isn't really about football anymore. It's about what football has become. This isn't the standard rookie with pressure narrative. It's not even the typical media darling arc. What we're witnessing with Shedeur is a collision between legacy and spectacle, discipline and digital culture, hype and development. And at the center of all is a 21-year-old quarterback who can't take a step without someone turning it into a headline.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
Shedeur's story didn't start with viral clips. It started with a football pedigree, a relentless work ethic, and the kind of confidence that doesn't come from the spotlight. It comes from preparation. But that doesn't matter anymore. At least, not to the media system that's latched onto his name. What matters now is visibility. What matters is engagement. And right now, Shedeur Sanders is pulling numbers. The NFL has always been a spectacle, but it used to be driven by what happened between the whistles. That's changed. Now, it's driven by what happens between the tweets. A post-game comment generates more coverage than a game-winning drive. A sideline smirk becomes a trending gif. A player's vibe matters more than their stat line. And that's exactly what this video is pulling apart. The attention surrounding Shedeur didn't just fall from the sky. It was constructed, engineered by a system that rewards controversy, personality, and perception over fundamentals, team cohesion, and actual football IQ. Shedeur didn't break the system. He just fits within it perfectly. He's charismatic, unbothered, meme-worthy, and savvy enough to know what feeds the algorithm. In today's NFL, that makes you a star before you ever take a snap at the pro level. But Bruce Arians wasn't clapping along with the rest of the internet. Arians, who spent decades watching young players rise and fall, wasn't trying to tear Shedeur down. He was calling out the system for putting him on a pedestal before he's had the chance to fully find his footing. He didn't criticize the player. He criticized the circus, the cycle, the feeding frenzy that turns development into content and growth into a headline. And yet, ironically, the moment he spoke up, he became content too. His cautionary remarks, which were focused, reasonable, and rooted in experience, were immediately reframed as a hot take or old man rant. He got dragged into the viral stream right alongside Shedeur, which only proves his point. You can't speak truth in a media landscape that profits from distortion. Even a warning gets twisted into fuel. The media isn't interested in mentorship. It's interested in momentum. So when Arians says, "Let's protect these young guys from premature fame," the reaction isn't support, it's skepticism. People roll their eyes and say, they need to toughen up. But what they're ignoring is that Shedeur's personality isn't the problem. His branding isn't the issue. The problem is that the system is designed to amplify all of it before the player has a chance to solidify their foundation. And Shedeur, he's navigating it better than most. He's poised. He's thoughtful. He answers media questions without flinching. He jokes without crossing lines. He engages fans without feeding trolls. That takes real skill, not just PR coaching. But that doesn't mean the system isn't exhausting. It just means he's doing a damn good job pretending it isn't. Because no matter how calm he seems, he's carrying weight most rookies never had to. He's not just trying to read defenses. He's trying to manage a narrative. He's trying to perform while everyone in the industry debates whether he's a phenom or a fraud. That's not growth. That's content under pressure. And it's not just unfair, it's dangerous. This kind of overexposure doesn't leave room for normal development. It doesn't allow for missteps, for learning curves, for building chemistry with teammates outside the spotlight. One rough game and it becomes a referendum. One interview and the media turns it into a personality test. That's the cost of attention when it comes too early and in too much volume. And make no mistake, this isn't a Shedeur only issue. It's just that he's the clearest example of how distorted the sports culture has become. We've created an ecosystem where players have to be entertainers first and athletes second. They're drafted into a brand machine that runs on controversy, and they're expected to perform on the field and on camera without missing a beat. The NFL, along with the media apparatus around it, has turned quarterbacks into personalities before they've even earned starting positions. And that shift, from discipline to drama, from strategy to storyline, is now influencing how players are scouted, coached, and developed. When you're incentivized to go viral, development becomes secondary. That's what Bruce Arians was trying to drag back into the conversation. Not to scold the new generation, but to remind everyone that football isn't about headlines. It's about craft. It's about consistency. And young players need space to build those things without the distraction of trying to win the internet every week. But the media doesn't reward patience. It rewards provocation. So the moment Arians spoke up, it turned into a battle of narratives. Old school versus new school. Traditionalism versus progress. Respect the game versus reinvent it. But that's a false choice. Arians wasn't saying players shouldn't have personalities. He was saying the media shouldn't treat personality like performance. Because when personality overshadows performance, the sport itself suffers. When the story becomes about what players say rather than what they do, we lose the heart of the game. And when a 21-year-old kid becomes the lightning rod for that cultural war, we lose the nuance. The NFL has always evolved. But what's happening now isn't evolution, it's erosion of boundaries, of priorities, of the values that made the sport great to begin with. When engagement metrics replace game film as the top metric of value, then we're no longer talking about football. We're talking about fame dressed in shoulder pads. And in that system, players like Shedeur become test subjects. What happens when you hand a rookie the media keys to the kingdom before they've proven themselves on the field? What happens when every facial expression becomes a tweet and every statement becomes a PR fire to manage? What happens is simple. The game becomes secondary. That's what Arians sees. That's why he spoke up. And that's why his comments struck a nerve. Because deep down, a lot of people agree. They see the shift. They feel the imbalance. They know that something has changed, and not necessarily for the better. They just don't say it out loud because in this ecosystem, silence is safer than honesty. But honesty is what this moment demands. This isn't about Shedeur Sanders failing. It's about what happens when we don't give young players the space to succeed authentically. It's about what we lose when attention becomes the end goal. And it's about how dangerously easy it is to confuse visibility with value. So while Shedeur might be keeping it all together right now, the question is, for how long? And how many others will get caught in the cycle that turns potential into pressure and growth into performance art? The media machine won't stop. The narratives won't slow down. The algorithms won't become kinder. But maybe, just maybe, people will start to listen when voices like Bruce Arians try to bring us back to the basics. Football isn't content. It's competition. It's execution. It's growth. And if we want the next generation of players to thrive, not just trend, we'd better start acting like that matters again. Let us know where you stand. Is this just the way sports works now? Or are we losing something important in the chase for clout? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And hit that subscribe button if you're into real stories, real tension, and everything they don't say on the broadcast. Because this story, it's far from over. And the next one's probably already trending. This Shedeur Sanders discourse, it's no longer just commentary. It's become a full-blown referendum on the state of sports itself. Because this isn't just about one player getting attention. It's about the shift from athlete to influencer, from gameplay to personal brand, from team dynamics to TikTok engagement. And the reason it feels so divisive is because we're watching two eras collide in plain sight. And Bruce Arians, knowingly or not, just put a spotlight on the fracture line. He didn't come out guns blazing. He didn't question Shedeur's skill. What he questioned was a media frenzy, a frenzy that turns every talented young player into a walking narrative, a viral package, a storyline with hashtags. Arians wasn't defending Shedeur from criticism. He was defending him from the noise. And that distinction matters. Because here's the thing. Shedeur isn't under fire because of poor performance. He's under fire because he's visible. And in this media climate, visibility is both armor and ammunition. Shedeur's rise is being scrutinized more than celebrated, not because of his actual ability, but because he represents something bigger, the son of a sports legend, confident, camera-ready, comfortable in the spotlight. That combination sets off alarm bells for the old guard. It signals disruption. It makes people uncomfortable, especially those who believe that football should be about quiet hard work and humble team-first mentality. But times have changed, and Shedeur didn't write the rules. He's just playing by the new ones. And that is where the tension lives. Bruce Arians, with his decades of experience, sees a system that used to prioritize discipline, consistency, and player development now bending over backwards for attention, headlines, and short-term engagement. His criticism wasn't that Shedeur shouldn't be in the spotlight. It's that the spotlight itself has become an uncontrollable monster, one that elevates players for the wrong reasons, and devours them just as quickly when the hype wears off. Because what's trending today isn't always what's enduring. And that's the trap. The NFL, media networks, team PR arms, and fans all benefit from building up young athletes as symbols of this new culture. They package them, market them, and push them out to the world as the next face of the game. But the second something cracks, whether the bad performance, a poorly worded quote, or just general overexposure, that same machine pivots. Suddenly the storyline changes. Is Shedeur more style than substance? Has the fame gone to his head? The cycle starts eating its own. And all of this is happening before the guy has even had a full NFL career. Shedeur isn't being judged solely on his play. He's being judged on his media presence, his family name, his composure under fire, his relevance in the digital age. And while he handles it with poise, that doesn't mean the environment isn't toxic. It's a pressure cooker disguised as opportunity. Yes, Shedeur is confident. Yes, he's polished. And yes, he knows exactly how to navigate the spotlight. But what happens when every single move is content? When every quote is dissected? When every slight misstep becomes the next viral clip? The NFL used to be about developing talent over time. Now it's about monetizing personality in real time. And let's be clear, this doesn't just impact the individual. It impacts teams. It impacts locker rooms. When attention becomes currency, dynamics shift. Teammates aren't just competing for playing time. They're competing for visibility, for marketability, for relevance. That's the part Bruce Arians was getting at. It's not that players can't have a brand. It's that the brand can't come before the ball. And in a media ecosystem where engagement is everything, that balance is being lost. The system doesn't reward quiet excellence anymore. It rewards disruption. It rewards flash. And players who don't fit into that mold, they get left behind, or worse, they get ignored altogether. And when a player does fit into the mold, like Shedeur, the expectations skyrocket. Suddenly he's expected to carry more than a football team. He's expected to carry a movement, a culture shift, a generational identity. That's not fair to him. That's not fair to any young player. Because when you build someone up as a symbol of the new era, the fall becomes even more brutal if things don't go perfectly. And with media, nothing is ever perfect for long. That's why Arians' criticism matters. Because it's not rooted in jealousy or resistance to change. It's rooted in concern. Genuine concern for a young athlete who's being used as a case study in a much bigger, messier cultural transformation. And the irony is, the more Arians tries to pull focus back to the game, the more the narrative spins out of control. His comments were meant to de-escalate the hype. But in this digital environment, even restraint becomes a lightning rod, because the system feeds on conflict. And when old school sensibility meets new school swagger, that's a headline goldmine. But lost in all of this is a simple truth. Shedeur Sanders didn't ask for this narrative war. He didn't demand to be the face of a cultural shift. He just want to play football. He's talented, composed, and from all indications, putting in the work. But instead of being allowed to evolve as a quarterback, he's being cast in a never-ending spectacle, one where football is just a backdrop for everything else. And that's a dangerous game, because when athletes become symbols, we stop seeing them as people. We stop giving them room to grow, to fail, to adjust. We turn them into avatars of things we like or hate about modern sports. And once that happens, the conversation stops being fair. It starts being about agendas. Bruce Arians knows that. He's seen players collapse under expectations they never signed up for. He's seen how fast the media can turn on someone once the storyline gets stale. And that's why he spoke up. Not because he wanted to join the conversation, but because he wanted to interrupt it. He wanted to remind people that behind the camera-ready confidence and the Deion Sanders surname is a young athlete who's still learning, still developing, still growing. And that if we don't give him that space, we're setting him up to fail. But here's the most frustrating part. Saying that now gets framed as controversial. Calling for patience is labeled out of touch. Advocating for development is seen as anti-progress. That's how far the pendulum has swung. And while Shedeur may continue to thrive in the spotlight, the system around him is still broken. It still values the wrong things. It still confuses attention for success. It still rewards the noise over the nuance. The question now is, how long can that last? How long before the weight of constant performance off the field starts to affect what happens on it? How long before another young athlete, less media trained, less composed, gets crushed under the pressure of going viral instead of going pro? And will anyone speak up then? Or will we just ride the next hype wave until it breaks? Because that's what this is really about. Not just Shedeur, not just Bruce Arians, but a sports culture that's being reshaped by the demands of a digital audience that always wants more. Louder personalities, faster takes, hotter storylines. And if we're not careful, we're going to lose something real in the process. The love of the game, the patience for growth, the value of actual, sustained excellence over fleeting engagement. Shedeur Sanders deserves to succeed on his own terms, not just as a son of a legend, not just as a face of a trend, and not just as a character in a constantly refreshing content cycle. He deserves to be evaluated for what he does, not what he represents. And if Bruce Arians ruffled some feathers by saying that out loud, good, because someone had to. The wild part? None of this is slowing down. If anything, it's accelerating. The culture that made Shedeur Sanders into a phenomenon before he's even taken an NFL snap, it's scaling up. Faster cycles, more cameras, hotter takes, and less time than ever for athletes to simply be athletes. That's the unsettling part of the story. Not that Shedeur's in the spotlight, but that we've normalized putting every young player in it without asking what that kind of attention actually does to them. It's no longer rare for a college quarterback to have a media team. It's expected. It's not surprising when rookies are asked about legacy and brand partnerships before their first pro game. It's the norm. And Bruce Arians? He just stepped into that whirlwind and said, "Wait, what are we doing?" He didn't say players should go silent. He didn't say social media was evil. He said, focus on football first. Protect the player. Give them the space to develop before forcing them into the 24/7 content machine. And in response, the same machine dragged him into the show, turned a thoughtful caution into another trending debate. Because that's a reality now. When you speak truth, you get turned into content, too. That's what makes this whole thing so toxic. The culture surrounding football today doesn't just build players up. It demands they constantly perform off the field. And when they don't, or when someone questions whether they should have to, that becomes the next show. We're not just watching athletes anymore. We're watching characters in a non-stop digital drama that resets every 24 hours. And that's what Shedeur Sanders has to navigate. That's what Bruce Arians was calling out. Because no matter how smart, how confident, how polished Shedeur is, and he's all three, he's still a young quarterback trying to master the most mentally demanding position in sports while being treated like a celebrity. And when that becomes the expectation, you stop giving people room to fail, to adjust, to learn. That's the real danger. The game is supposed to allow for growth, but the spotlight doesn't. It demands clarity, certainty, and success now. No excuses. No grace period. Just results. And if you can't provide those results immediately, the narrative pivots. The same headlines that built you up will come back with a vengeance, ready to tear you down. So when Bruce Arians speaks up and says, slow down, he's not being cranky, he's being compassionate. He's been around long enough to know how this ends for some players. He's seen the fallout. And he's trying to say, let's not let that happen again. But in the current NFL media ecosystem, compassion reads as criticism. Concern gets reframed as hate. And nuance? Completely lost. That's the trap. That's the game behind the game. And Shedeur, whether he likes it or not, is playing both. One on the field, one online, one based on execution, the other based on engagement. And somehow, both count toward his reputation. That's the weight. That's the risk. And that's why this conversation matters. Because if we let this continue unchecked, if we keep forcing players to be entertainers first and athletes second, what does that say about the future of sports? Are we building legends or just temporary storylines? Shedeur Sanders isn't just a quarterback. He's a mirror, reflecting exactly where we are, caught between the tradition of football and the transformation of fame. And Bruce Arians? He's the one standing on the sidelines, waving the flag, trying to remind everyone that the scoreboard still matters more than the search bar. But no one listens to warnings in real time. They only listen in hindsight, after someone gets burned, after the system eats one of its own. Let's not wait for that. So what do you think? Has the line between athlete and influencer officially vanished? Are we creating pressure that no player, no matter how confident, can carry long-term? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And hit subscribe if you're into pulling back the curtain on the chaos behind the highlights. Because this isn't just about one player. It's about the future of the entire game. And the next story, it's already loading.